Thank you, Presiding Officer. It's timely that, as the only Parliament allowed to sit today, we hold the Westminster Government to account for their immigration policy and the impact that it will have on further and higher education in Scotland. As the chaos in Westminster continues, we hear increasingly alarming and anti-democratic language from the Prime Minister. That he would rather die in a ditch than request an extension to the Article 50 deadline, something he's now required to do by law. That he's exploring every possible way to circumnavigate that law, to deliver a no-deal Brexit. Despite the UK Parliament's best efforts, the prospect of crashing out of the EU without a deal remains a possibility. And that would be disastrous for universities and colleges in Scotland. Immigration and free movement have underpinned the success of our further and higher education sectors. Over 1/5 of university students in Scotland is from somewhere else. That's over 50,000 students, about 31,000 of whom are from outside the European Union. It's a higher proportion of international students than the rest of the UK, reflecting the world-leading status of Scotland's universities. The benefit of international students coming here is not just limited to those individuals, of course. They enrich our society and contribute to the local and national economy. They bring new cultural experiences and ideas and integrate them into Scottish society. They contribute to developing a more outward-looking Scotland, open to the world and comfortable with our place in it. Many international students also settle in Scotland after their studies, using their expertise and skills to benefit this country. They often fill some of the acute skills gaps that we suffer from. Over 30% of academic staff at our universities are themselves from outside of Scotland, rising to almost half of research staff. This international expertise has ensured that Scotland remains a leading centre of research and innovation. It has driven huge international investment in R&D here. This means institutions like Edinburgh University's Scottish Centre for Regenerative Medicine and Strathclyde's Technology Innovation Centre, which is part of the International Technology and Renewable Energy Zone in Glasgow, have benefited immensely from international expertise and funding. And I would commend both of them to all members as being well worth a visit. They're excellent examples of the benefits of European collaboration. But we're all here today because all of this is threatened by the Conservative government at Westminster. As we edge closer to leaving the European Union, with or without a deal, we run the serious risk of seeing the UK's cruel and destructive immigration policies and the dysfunctional, arbitrary administration of those policies expanded to EU citizens who are currently shielded by their rights under freedom of movement. This is the immigration policy that has seen people deported to their deaths. It's denied child trafficking victims the right to stay in the UK. Whistleblowers have even accused the Home Office of having lied to other European states in order to deport victims of human trafficking against European law. This summer, the Home Office was called out by 70 senior university research centre leaders for repeatedly refusing visas for researchers from Africa, including Ebola researchers from Sierra Leone. What on earth was the value, what on earth was the benefit to the UK of denying visas to those researching that disease? Hundreds of thousands more people in Scotland would be subject to immigration rules designed to force them out and to drain their income in the process. The hostile environment policy, which continues to this day, has already given us the Windrush scandal. People with every right to be here had their lives ruined. They were banned from working, evicted from their homes, denied public support, in some cases denied medical support, and even deported to countries that they hadn't seen for decades, that they had no realistic connection with. While institutional racism was central to the Windrush scandal, one of the key issues that made that generation so vulnerable to the hostile environment was their lack of records, their proof of residence and who they are. They lacked those records because they didn't need them when they arrived, and they didn't need them for decades thereafter. They were simply not required in law at that time. Well, EU citizens have not needed those records either. They didn't have to apply to any state body to come to the UK. They simply exercised their treaty right to freedom of movement in the same way that many UK citizens have done elsewhere across our continent. And there is, of course, a new settled status scheme for EU citizens designed to give them those records. But I have no faith in the Home Office. Already I've seen cases of EU citizens who've been in this country for decades being denied settled status, allegedly for not having proof of residence, despite it being abundantly obvious, despite decades of paperwork to prove their case. There's a chance that the crimes the Home Office inflicted on the Windrush generation will be repeated on EU citizens. That's a chance that I'm just not willing to take, and I know that a majority of members in here feel the same way. We must We must not only dismantle the hostile environment, it's time that we abolished the Home Office to completely tear down the institutional racism that is embedded within it. It's imperative now more than ever that immigration policies are devolved to Scotland. Not just in recognition of the social, cultural and economic benefits brought here by immigrants, but in recognition of the injustice and the rampant criminality that has characterised the UK government's immigration policies. When we finally have control over immigration here, we must create a free and open system, one that seizes the opportunities citizens of the world have to offer us, and which respects the inherent dignity of all people, regardless of where they come from. It can be easy to fall into the trap of populist and even racist rhetoric. It's something that's infected many parties, though it's the Conservatives and Liberal Democrats who are directly responsible for the hostile environment through the 2014 Immigration Act. Until such time as we're responsible for our own immigration and asylum systems, I support the measures contained within the government's motion. The 3-year temporary leave to remain proposal clearly doesn't take into consideration Scottish universities. Amending it would be welcome. It's something the UK government could have done long before now. However, these proposals, along with the Fresh Talent Scheme, are only tinkering around the edges. They're damage limitation exercises at what is, at its core, a horrendously racist and discriminatory immigration system. Scotland's colleges and universities, our students and their staff, deserve so much better than this.